Hi, I'm Dave Vickers and welcome to the Photo Show. With winter approaching, the opportunities to go out and take great photographs are getting less and less. So what I'm going to do today is show you something you can do any time of the year, but particularly in the winter nights, is to go out and photograph the moon. Now, photographing the moon can be quite tricky. There's a few things that will trip you up, and there's a few things that are kind of counterintuitive to what you think photographing an object at night would be. But I'm going to show you some settings you can put on your camera and some tips and tricks that will help you get some really great photographs of the moon. The other reason I'm doing this is on the 14th of November 2016, we're going to get what's called a supermoon. This means that because the moon has an elliptical orbit, it's not circular, it's going to be closer to the Earth than it has been for almost 70 years. The last time it was this close was 1948, and the next time it will be this close will be 2034. So it's quite a good opportunity to go out and take some photographs of this beautiful spectacle. As a result, the moon's going to appear something like 14% larger and 30% brighter in the sky. So it's going to give us some really good opportunities to get some great shots. Remember, if you like what you see on the photo show, please comment, like and subscribe in the boxes below. Let's move on to look at photographing the moon. Okay, so there's only some basic things we're going to actually need to take great photographs of the moon. One is a camera. Number two is a reasonably good sized lens. Now, this lens I've got here is a 200mm zoom lens. It's going to get us closer, obviously closer than the standard lens would get. Again though, because the camera here is a crop sensor camera, it's a 1.5 crop, so it'll actually magnify the lens by 1.5. So even though this is a 200mm lens, it will actually magnify up to be a 300mm lens. So with that in mind, there is also one other thing I can do. With the D7100, we also have a crop mode where you can crop the sensor down to, again, another 1.3 times crop. It's only using the center of the sensor, but it will give a bit of extra reach on the lens. So it will turn what is working as a 300mm lens into basically what is just over a 400mm lens. So that's getting us a bit closer again. For the time being, we're going to leave the camera set on its normal DX mode. So, camera and lens, that's the first thing. The next thing, let's put the lens on the camera. So we're starting where we mean to go on. So there we go. With our lens on our camera, ready to go. Now, one of the next things we need to look at is the moon is actually a lot brighter than people imagine. You imagine that you're taking something at night, and so therefore you're going to need a long exposure and a wide aperture to photograph the moon. But the moon is actually incredibly bright. It's the sunlight reflecting off of a big grey rock in the sky, which is actually quite a bright object. Now, because of this, your metering can quite easily be fooled if you're trying to use the meter in the camera to get a reading to take a good photograph. So one of the first things I'm going to do is change my metering mode. So you can see here, you get the reflection there, it's showing that the metering mode is in what's called matrix metering. And that basically means that it's metering the entire scene. The night sky and the moon will be metered if you keep the metering on your camera in matrix metering. And that's going to give you a false reading because the majority of the viewpoint is black. The camera's going to be searching for an average between the lightest part and the darkest part. And because the darkest part is mainly black, it's going to give a much lower setting reading than is required to actually get photographs of the moon. And what you're going to end up doing is getting a grey looking sky and a very blown out white disk of the moon. And that's not what we're looking to do. What we want to see is detail in the moon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my metering mode by holding down the button there to spot metering. You can see that. Let's go back. That's matrix metering, and that's showing that it's metering the entire scene. Next along is spot metering. And what that's going to do is that's going to just give the very, very center of the frame as your metering point. So when you're out photographing the moon, put the very center of your frame over the moon itself and take your exposure reading from that. And basically what that's doing is just reading the light part of the moon. It's ignoring the sky, which will give any false readings, and just giving you the reading for the moon. That's the first part. So that's the metering set. The next thing I'm going to set on the camera to make things easier for us is to put the camera onto a self-timer. Now, we're going to be using the camera on a tripod. It's not exactly necessary. I'll explain in a while why you can do this handheld. But just to make everything stable and to make it easier for us to film, I'm going to be putting the camera onto a tripod. So to avoid any camera shake, the fact that we're using a longer lens as well, that can always introduce camera shake as well. There's a rule normally that you try and keep your shutter speed to the equivalent of the lens's length. So as we were saying here, this is a 200mm lens, so therefore we would keep our shutter speed at around 200th of a second. And that handheld would give you a steady shot. But because we're on a tripod, that's not exactly as necessary a part of it. So what I want to do now is turn our camera onto self-timer. So you come up to the top here. We've got the little dial here. It's on single shot there. Go round. There we go. That's the self-timer. Now at the moment, by default, I think the self-timer is set on 10 seconds. Okay, so we're in the camera's menus now. And what I want to do is to set the self-timer. By default, it's normally set to 10 seconds. I want to shorten that down to something like 2 seconds, so we're not wasting a whole heap of time. So we come down the settings here to the little pencil icon, which is your customs menu settings. Come across, and as you can see there on C, we've got timers and AE lock. So we press OK. And at C3 there, we have self-timer. Press OK again. And the first option there is self-timer delay. And you can see there, it's by default, it's on 10 seconds. So let's go into that menu there, and we're going to back that down to 2 seconds. So basically what's going to happen now is, now that we've set that and we've got the camera set on self-timer, when we press the shutter button, the camera's going to wait 2 seconds before it actually fires the shutter and takes the image. Therefore, that our hands can be away from the camera and it's avoiding any camera shake. The camera is just purely firing on its own without us having hands on the camera. So that's that side of it. Let's come out of the menus now. So we've set our metering to be spot metering. We've set our dial at the top here to be self-timer. And we've set the duration of the self-timer to be 2 seconds. Now, one of the other things we can do is to bracket our shots. But I'll probably do that when we're actually out and about photographing. So that we've got a couple of options. So the camera will take 2 or 3 shots. One at the correct exposure, one a stop under, and one a stop over. So we've got 3 options there to pick from. Now, going back to settings, what we're actually going to set the camera up to do. Now, as I said, we're going to use the spot metering to get a reading. But there is a strange rule that we can use when we're photographing the moon. And it's got a couple of names. I've heard it called the Lunar 11 rule or the Loony 11 rule. Whichever one you want to go with, I'm happy with. We'll call it the Lunar 11 rule since we're shooting the moon. So the rule here is that if you set your aperture at f11, then set your shutter speed at the same as your ISO. So let's do this. Let's reset the ISO. So let's bring our ISO down to ISO 100. So there we go. Set the ISO at 100. And now if we set our shutter speed down at 100th of a second as well, that's going to give us a good starting point. And I've tried this technique and it does actually work. You set your aperture to f11 and set your shutter speed to be the same as your ISO. So if you're shooting at ISO 100, have your shutter speed at 100th of a second. If you're shooting at ISO 200, have your shutter speed at 200th of a second, and so on and so on and so on. And it's a really good starting point. You can always adjust the shutter speed once you're actually there. So yeah, using the Lunar 11 rule, if you can keep your shutter speed at the same as your ISO. So if you find that it's a really good starting point. If you find that your image is underexposed, you can always lower your shutter speed down a little bit to let in a little bit more light. If you find it's overexposed, you can always raise the shutter speed up a little bit to compensate and a little less light in to get the shot. So basically that's the setup that you're going to want to do on your camera. So quick run through, we've changed the metering from a matrix metering to a spot metering, so that what we're reading, taking our light reading from, is the brightest part of the sky, the actual moon we're looking to photograph. And we're discounting the dark part of the sky. So the spot metering allows us to do that. The self timer allows us to put the camera on a tripod, push the shutter, get our hands away from the camera. The camera will then fire 2 seconds later, stopping any camera shake and helping us to get a sharper image again. And the third part is using the Lunar 11 rule. So run through that again. Basically what you do is you set your aperture to f11. You then set your shutter speed to be equal to your ISO. So if your ISO is 100, shutter speed is 100th of a second, aperture is f11. If your ISO is 400, shutter speed is 400th of a second, aperture is f11, and so on and so on. It's a really good starting point, and then you can work out your stops up and stops down again. Again, I said I think we're going to be bracketing these shots, so we're going to be shooting as many images as we can to try and get the best shot out of it we can. So all that remains to do now is for us to wait for the sky to go dark, the moon to come up, and then we can go out and start taking some great photos. As you can see, the sun's gone down, it's nice and dark, and the moon's now up. So I'm going to set the camera up on the tripod and start shooting and see what kind of images we can get. Right, so we've got the camera now set up on the tripod, if you can see this. It's very dark, and if you can see just in the background there, we've got the moon as well. So let's put the camera into live view. And you can see there, it's actually behind a bit of cloud, so it's a bit misty at the moment. If I can line that up dead center, and we'll see if the camera will also focus on it. Now it seems to be searching for the focus, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through, take it off of live view and focus the camera manually on the edge of the moon, so that we're getting as sharp an image as we can, and hopefully the clouds will clear and we'll get a bit clearer image. Let's come back to live view again. Okay, that seems to be focused. It's not, doesn't look as focused on the live view, but it is focused to the viewfinder. I'm now going to go round and set my autofocus to manual. So now I know that it's locked on the moon, the autofocus is on manual, and we can start to shoot. So all the settings we had before, if you have a look here, we're at 100th of a second, f11, and an ISO of 100 as well. So if we push the shutter now with the self timer on, camera's going to wait 2 seconds. And you can see there, if we can zoom in on this, see if it's sharp then. It's not bad, we're getting quite a lot of detail there as well. So let's carry on, let's put the camera back into live view. And we'll take a few more shots. You see now, the moon's actually looking very far away, but we're going to have to crop this down when we're in post anyway, just to get the best image out of it. So let's take another shot. And we're starting to get some decent images now. Let's zoom that image up again on the screen so we can have a look at what kind of detail we're getting. Hopefully you can see that. We'll put the photo up as well, but that's actually showing quite a lot of detail for the moon, and it's looking pretty good. So let's carry on. And you can see now, just in the short time we've been filming, how much the moon has moved from the center spot out. It's the rotation of the Earth is much quicker than you ever think. So it's moves quite quickly across the sky. So we'll try and put this back as centered as we can. And let's do another couple of shots. You can see here we've actually got a bit of cloud coming over, which is not helping because that's giving us a bit of a hazy view, and that's actually going to make things a little bit softer in the focus. If anyone's worried, they're fireworks, don't worry, no one's shooting. Right, one thing I'm going to try now is I'm actually going to bracket a few shots. So I'm going to come around to my bracketing button, which is round here on the front of the camera. Hold that in. Don't know if you can see this. And now I need to, I don't think I can actually do this with holding the camera. So I'm just going to set the bracketing and we'll be straight back. Okay, so I've set the camera now to shoot a sequence of shots. It's actually going to shoot 3 images. One will be the correct exposure, one will be 1 stop over, and one will be 1 stop under. So let's fire that now. And as you heard then, it took 3 shots. So one of those shots will be bang on the correct exposure, one of them will be underexposed, and one of them will be overexposed. So we've got options there that we can work with in post and have a look and see if we can get the best image out of it. The other thing I'm going to try now is I'm using the Lunar 11 rule, as I was saying earlier. So our ISO is 100. I've put the shutter speed at 100th of a second, and I've used f11 as the f-stop. So I'm just going to have a look and see what kind of reading the camera will give me if I just meter using the camera's meter. So you can see now that the camera's meter is only just coming back into play. You can see here on the meter here that it's only just coming back into play with the shutter speed saying it's at 1/3 of a second. So let's take a shot and see what that looks like. And as you can see, so letting the camera do the metering has way overexposed the image. It's still reading for the sky as well as the moon itself. So I'm going to bring this back up to 1/100th of a second. Bring our camera back round again. And I'm just going to check the focus on the image again. So I've refocused the camera again just to make sure that we're still sharp. And let's do a few more shots. You can see there that the screen actually, when you've taken the shot, scrolls through the 3 bracketed shots we've taken. Let's do that again so you can see what we're talking about. Shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. So, hopefully, we've got some good images. There we go. It's like Blair Witch Project. So, there we go. We've taken photos of the moon, we've focused it manually, we've used the Lunar 11 rule, which is again is using the ISO as the equivalent of your shutter speed. So whatever your shutter speed is, set your ISO to the same and set the camera to f11. And we're getting some really good results. We'll stick these in the computer, run them through Camera Raw or Lightroom, and see what the results look like. For now, I'm Dave Vickers. This is The Photo Show. Thanks for watching.